Hmm. Some memories, huh? Some memories, people. I remember once, I'll share a memory with you folks. I remember many years ago, when I was doing my hifz, memorizing the Quran in Islamabad, in Pakistan, I, towards the latter part of Ramadan, they allowed us to go home, so on our break. So I'd gone home to the village. So this is into Azad Kashmir, those ends. Now, I was there, and you see, because I'm memorizing the Quran, I'd done perhaps about 16 juz or something like this. So I'm there, and I go to the Taraweeh, and in the daytime I go into the masjid, so the Imam sees me, and he knows that who I am, and he knows that I'm here memorizing the Quran. So he said, oh, mashallah, you're back, you're here. So I said, yeah, I'm just here on a break. And he said, yeah. And so I just, small talk. I just said, mashallah, what juz are you guys on today? So he said to me, how many juz have you memorized? And back then I don't know if I was naive, but I think there was an adopted simplicity. I had a very simple, in my very early practicing days, when I obviously I was always Muslim, but when I became fully, I immersed myself into, I want to learn, and I took a very ascetic kind of simple approach, and very kind of hermetic, became like a hermit. So this was in my late teens. And I used to do very, I don't want... This is why I understand when people are going through this stuff, because I went through it as a teenager, right? So for a short while anyway, until alhamdulillah, Allah rescued me from... But there was that kind of hermit lifestyle, and you got to give this up for the sake of Allah, and I'll just give it up. Whatever it was, I would give it up. I wouldn't... I remember one of the things was, I used to have long hair. Yeah, so, with the undercut back then, so you could kind of tie it as a ponytail thing. So I used to have long hair like that. And I remember people saying, this is haram, you can't have this, for the sake of Allah. So I straight went to the barber, said, shave all my head. For me, it was, if I want Islam, whatever people, because at the time I didn't have knowledge. So what people told me to be Islam, I perceived it to be true. And so I just made the sacrifices. People told me you're not allowed to have luxury in life. So I just, fine. I just gave stuff up. People actually told me that it's really sunnah. You shouldn't, people ought to kind of lay out mats and sleep on the floor and stuff like this. So, so I was like, okay. So I went through all of these phases. So when I see people going through that stage of Islam, I identify, I understand why it's not that I don't have an understanding, that they think oh, this guy, what does he know? I went through that, but alhamdulillah, I went through it at an age where it was just deemed a phase. And I was young, and then with time I kind of started to learn stuff, and so alhamdulillah, I was kind of gave up that kind of nonsensical approach. But anyway, back to this village. So I was there, and I said to him that I've memorized the Imam. I've memorized about 15 juz. So he said to me, now I've got one of those major mattresses, one of those, oh yeah, one of those proper sink-in awesome ones. But you see, so I told him I've memorized half the Quran. So he said, the Imam said, right, that's okay. We're ahead of you. You don't know. you haven't got to... We're on the 17th juz. So I was like, oh, okay. Now, come Taraweeh time, I'm there, and the Imam's... he starts reciting. And I wasn't paying attention first, and then I start listening, and he's just reading nonsense. He's not reading anything. He's just going... and then he's just saying a random... a common phrase to end, verses Allahu Akbar. And then I was like, huh? What is he reading? And so what caught my attention is he started reading certain verses from like Surah An-Nisa. So I thought, okay, isn't that Surah? Didn't he say to me he's on the 17th juz? So now I started to pay attention. Like, what is he reading? So he was reading nothing. He was just going like, Allahu Akbar. So I was like, how come I can't make out anything he's reading? Apart from like, كان, you know, إن الله كان بما تعملون بصيرا, إن الله كان خبير بما تعملون, just like Wallahu alimun basir, and you just say like few words like that, and that's it. Go into sujood. So I'm thinking, nah, maybe that. Come on, it can't be like. So I'm thinking, zoom in with. So he starts reading random verses from like a verse from Surah Yasin, like a popular verse. So I'm thinking, what? Isn't that verse from? And then he'll read a popular verse from Surah Baqarah, and then he'll just go. And in between he'll put like a verse, a real verse, but like a popular one. So let's say you're gonna say something like, I don't know, like he's gonna وما كان محمد, you know, like أبا أحد من رجالكم. Now that verse isn't gonna come in other places of the Quran. So you're thinking, wait a minute, isn't that verse from? And then he'll just jump to a verse from like Surah Baqarah, and you're thinking, oh, well, I know that verse very well. That verse is from Surah Baqarah. And you're thinking, what is he? And then he'll just go, and then I realized this guy's blagging it. He's in full-on blag mode. This guy's blagging the hell out of the qira'ah of the Quran. He's not reading any Quran. This is nothing. So I was like, acha, cha. Ye game khel rahe hain aap. This is what's going down. So afterwards, we finished, and so he's gone into his kind of room where he had this, you know, the Imam's room. So I've gone in there, right? So he's seen me, he's incredibly nervous. And the guy's like, he looks at me and he's like, so he's waiting. So I don't want to embarrass him, right, too much. Like I wanted to see his response. So I go, mashallah. So I go to him, mashallah. So when it was a bit, so there were 1-2 people still there. I said, mashallah. I said, yeah. I said, yeah. What juz were we listening to today? And so he looks at me and he goes, the 17th juz. So I was like, mashallah. So I had like one of those straight faces. I go, mashallah. So I go, how was the? I asked him. I go, how was the tilawa? What do you think? How did you find it? He was, oh my God, because now the cat was out of the bag. The game was busted. He knew I was onto him. So he just went, I go, now, how did you find the qira'ah? How was it? Was it? And so he goes to me, what do you think of it? I go, I think mashallah. So what happened is he waited for 1-2 of these people to leave the room. And then he goes to me, please, I'm so sorry. He goes, look, what it is that I've been, he goes, I know the Quran. He's the Imam of the mosque. And this is a mosque where they have darwish, so they have students who also, they teach them hifz as well, basically. They call them, in that part of Pakistan, we call them darwish. So these kind of students who live in the mosque and study like that. So, and he wasn't like a young lad. I mean, he was young. What I mean by that, he wasn't like a teenager kid or something. This guy was probably like maybe in his late 20s, 30, like that kind of age. So I was probably just at the time about 19 or something like that. So he goes, he said to me, oh, you know what it is? I know the Quran solid. trust me, I know it so well, you can test me, but I have this disease, I have this illness. He goes, when I stand up on the musalla, on the sajjada, when I stand on the mat, I forget everything. And it's like it's an illness I've got. Trust me, it's a mental illness. I'm not, I'm not trying to mess around with the Quran. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to do this. I'm not trying to do that. And so it was hilarious, man. So he goes to me, please, like keep my, my dignity. Don't expose me. Don't do this. Don't do that. So I just said to him, look, it's not my business. Yeah. But you know what you're doing is wrong. You're misleading these people, man. I said, like, look, if you can't read the Quran, then don't read it. Like, or if you want somebody else to read it, get them to read it. Or if you're going to read short surahs, read short surahs. But don't kind of like, this is like a joke with the Quran. And I said, look, as far as exposing you is concerned, like, I go, look, you know what you're doing is wrong. Allah knows what you're doing is wrong. And it's not going unknown, like people know this. But I said, it's your responsibility. I'm not here about trying to create some drama about you, but I just think this is wrong. And he said to me, he said, look, I've just got tomorrow's day left, and then I'm going to make one of those students read the rest of the Quran. So please. So I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. I just said, look, whatever. Like, basically you know what's right and you know what's wrong. And then I just really didn't attend the mosque after that. But yeah, man, some interesting fun and games, huh? And then that good for nothing, check this out. See, when you do something, when you help someone, he, like after that, he was suspicious that I had told people. I just keep myself to myself. He went to my grandfather, who was quite a simple man, lived his life. My paternal grandfather was a simple man. Not my maternal grandfather. He was a don in the making. But this, my paternal grandfather was a very simple, somebody very religious, always prayed his tahajjud, always read the Quran throughout a certain portion of the night. Very kind of simple, like a man like that. And he went to him and he said, oh, do you know your your grandson has become a Wahhabi? Like, check that out. Like, what the hell? And he told him that he's destroyed his Islam and he's done this and he's done that. And like, not that, obviously I wasn't a Wahhabi, but the point was that just as a propaganda, in case I expose him, so he wanted to take a preemptive shot at me. Paki politics, huh? This is what they call in the local lingo, slang, a shoddi shot. That's what he did. But anyway, so now let's get to some of these questions, people. Let's get to some of these questions. What's going on? I thought I don't know why that memory came up, but I thought let's share it with you guys.